Last week was one of the best wildcard weekends the NFL's presented to us in quite some time. It was a weekend where all of the games it was a weekend where most of the games consisted of both teams really going at each other, whether it be offensively or defensively, whatever it may be. It was bloody battles across the board. It was peak entertainment, I tell you, and we head into the divisional round, and looking around, there's not a single game that looks like, oh, this team, should win. This really belongs to this team, and, one-sided battle, all that shit. No, these are even games that either team of all these games could win. And that's exactly what you want here in the divisional round. So yeah, with that said, let's give a moment of silence to the eliminated teams and get right into it. First up, you got the Buffalo Bills playing the one-seeded Broncos in Denver. The Bills game was the one game that I got wrong last week because I actually picked the Jaguars to defeat Buffalo, but the Bills came out there and they took down the Jaguars, which really isn't surprising. Like I said, that was a game that either team could have won. I just thought the Jaguars had the slight edge there. They were coming into the game hot. And the Bills actually defeated the Jaguars by playing the pass quite efficiently, because if you remember, the Jaguars had the best run defense in the NFL, or at least of all the remaining playoff teams. And the Bills, they didn't really do a whole lot of run. I mean, they did, but, it was the passing that really got it done against the Jaguars. But just after facing the best run defense in the league, the Bills will have the pleasure of going against the next best run defense in the league against the Broncos. But not only do the Broncos have a top 3 run defense, they have a top 3 overall defense that's done nothing but beat people like their meat all season long. And unlike Jacksonville, the Broncos are also really good at stopping the pass, which is again what the Bills really leaned on last week. However, looking at the other side of the ball, the Broncos offense, it hasn't been too pretty. They're hovering around the number 10 spot in passing offense, and for rushing offense, they are pretty middle ground, right around 16, 17. But just in general, if you actually watch a lot of these Broncos games, the offense just doesn't look efficient at times, really too often. There's just too many times where I've seen that Broncos offense try and operate, and it's like, ooh, I don't know, that's definitely not an elite operation up there. There is a small amount of hope for them, though, because the Bills have quite a few questionable players on their defense. But the Bills' defense has been rather solid for the last few weeks, so I guess we'll have to see how that looks this game. But this game really comes down to the Bills' offense versus the Broncos' defense. Those are the most definitive sides of the ball for these teams. But on top of all of that, there's no way I was about to forget that this game is being played in Mile High. The Broncos have a stamina advantage. There's slightly less O2 up there. And this isn't a fucking conspiracy either. The Broncos are 8-1 at home. They are dominant up there in the mountains like that. I'm telling you, it's like a legitimate advantage. But home field advantage aside, I kind of feel good picking the Broncos to win this game. That defense is just a little too nasty. Being able to dominate both run and passing, I don't know how the Bills are going to be able to combat that, but we will see. I do have Denver winning, though. Next up, you got this beautiful renewed rivalry. The 49ers versus the Seahawks in Seattle. Just exactly as I predicted, the 49ers beat the Eagles in Philadelphia in a solid defense shit offense matchup. The 49ers offense was held down for the most part of the game, but they were able to score a couple of big touchdowns towards the end, so they kind of picked it up. And San Francisco's defense was also really solid that game. However, it was against a poorly coordinated Eagles offense that for the past couple months now, I have shouted from the mountaintops how fucking terrible and disorganized they've looked for over the last handful of games. The 49ers played good defense, but they were bailed out by just a shit offense in general. We gotta be honest. If you put me in at wide receiver in place of AJ Brown, it would have had the same effect for that offense. It was that bad. But in classic 49er fashion, they may have gotten the big W, but they took a big L in the process. George Kittle tore his Achilles that game, and he will be out for the remainder of the postseason and likely a large chunk of the next season as well. It's actually impressive how many star players the 49ers have lost over the course of these last 2 years. George Kittle may be the one who's injured, but 49er fans are in more pain after seeing this shit happen over and over and over again. You might look at this clip and think 49ers fans are walking past a zoo, but no, that's just Eagles fans. If any of those glass bottles hit one of those Niner fans in the face, it would still be less painful than having George Kittle be out for the remainder of the postseason. And of course, that hurts even more knowing they're taking on a Seattle Seahawks team that has a top 10 defense in the NFL, though they do specialize more so in stopping the run. And this was made very clear to San Francisco a couple weeks ago in that Week 18 matchup where CMC, really nobody could get a run going against the Seahawks defense. On top of that, if your defense is soft enough, the Seahawks will have no problem slicing that shit up. So with this in mind, it looks like the Seahawks blow the 49ers out of the water here. But hear me out. The Seahawks do have one big weakness. They love to turn the ball over. No team actually in the NFL has turned the ball over more than the Seahawks, other than the Minnesota Vikings. And as far as the remaining playoff teams, it's not even close. And on top of that, for some reason, Brock Purdy is still undefeated in Seattle. I guess playing there just gives him some sort of boost in every major quarterback stat. And the 49ers haven't lost a divisional game in over 20 years. So if Brock Purdy is able to come with some of that energy and that defense can force some turnovers, this is looking very favorable for the Niners. But with all that said, I do have the Seahawks losing this game. That's right. I'm picking the Niners to go for the upset. I don't believe in Seattle enough. I can't trust them right now. I believe the 49ers really have learned their mistakes from the matchup a couple weeks ago and will capitalize off of those mistakes and take down this one-trick pony-ass team. Next up, the Patriots will be defending against the Houston Texans. The Patriots won their highly dominant defensive matchup against the the LA Justin Herbert. I can't put into words how sickening it is to watch Herbert get dragged down by his peers on offense. His receivers weren't super helpful. His O-line was garbage. This right here was the only play where another offensive Charger looked somewhat determined to win this game. It's just as depressing as watching your wife passionately cheating on you in your bed. The Patriots just wouldn't let Herbert breathe. They pressured his ass 16 times, forcing him to scramble 10 times, sacking him 6 times, and even a couple of forced fumbles. I'm not going to sit up here and make it seem like the Patriots got handed that win because they absolutely did their thing. They came to play, that defense showed up. Meanwhile, the Texans defeated the Steelers in a game that went about as expected. Highly defensive up until the Texans decided to take off in the fourth quarter. Both Houston and New England's defenses were all over their opponents last week. However, the Texans fumbled the ball multiple times that game. I literally lost count, and they turned the ball over 3 times, which is the clear reason as to why they were unable to really do much for the first 3 quarters. But they also forced 2 turnovers that would wind up touchdowns in those plays. And the Patriots offense was held down by a less dominant Chargers defense, as in the Chargers defense is a step down from the Texans. The Chargers defense did also come to play. They gave New England some problems. So really, both of these teams' defenses are what led them to their victories. They both held their opponents to 3 and 6 points, allowing 0 touchdowns. And I imagine that because of this will be a low-scoring affair, this matchup between these two. Now, Nico Collins did get a concussion in his matchup, so he is questionable to play for the Texans as of recording this video. And that's going to hurt Houston because they need every offensive weapon they can get for this matchup, because the defense of the Patriots, I imagine, is going to go crazy like they did against LA. So this game is really just going to come down to who has the hungrier offense, and I think the Patriots do, quite honestly. Again, just looking at the Texans' offense against the Steelers, all the fumbles, the turnovers, all that bullshit, it just did not look appetizing as a viewer. And on top of that, 13 of their 30 points scored against the Steelers were by the defense. The defense scored 2 touchdowns towards the end of the game, against a pathetic Steelers offense, might I add. And also, just a little bonus point, the Texans just have had a hard time getting past the divisional round recently, it seems like. I understand it's always because they're taking on the best teams in the AFC, but right now I just feel good picking the Patriots. They just look like they want it more, they're playing harder from what I can see on both sides of the ball. And that offense just looks a little bit more organized than the Texans. And lastly, on Sunday Night Football, you got the LA Rams taking on the Chicago Bears. One intriguing ass matchup. The Rams barely beat the Carolina Panthers last week. You already lost to them. You already lost to the Carolina Panthers somehow, and now you barely beat them? It was once again a case of the Rams looking elite for the most part of the game, and then they just start to crumble. Carolina starts to crawl back into it, and they damn near won. It came down to like one final drive. If you watched that game and you didn't know any better, you would assume that those two teams were on the same skill level. But they're not. The Rams were supposed to be this fucking Giga Chad apex predator that the entire league fears, up against the Panthers, who were only in the playoffs because they got lucky and won the raffle to be the prom king of the trash-ass NFC South. Like, I don't understand how you could be a Rams fan and feel good about that game. You should be concerned. But later after that game, the Bears took on the Packers and once again pulled off an immaculate comeback against the same choking Green Bay team. The same way they just beat the Packers a few weeks ago, trailing by 10 and bouncing back in the final minutes of the game, they did it again. Though they were trailing by 18 points this time, still pulled it off, playing some fucking elite clutch football in the fourth quarter. But once again, that of course means that they were playing like shit for the first 3 quarters. So this is really a battle between two teams that just cannot play 60 minutes of football. That has been the big issue for both of these teams all season long. They play great at some point, but just not the entire way through, and that has cost them a few games. But the small difference is when these two teams are collapsing and or rising in these matchups. The Bears will play like shit for the first part of the game and then climb back into it very late. And the Rams are quite the opposite. They'll play elite for the first 3 quarters and then just start kicking back in what they delude themselves to be as garbage time. And we've seen many teams this season make that same mistake against the Bears. The Bears have climbed back, and it's so ironic because the Bears are known for having clutch shit being done on them. But this season, they've turned all that shit around. And the cherry on top of all of this, Matthew Stafford is questionable to even play in this game at the time of recording, which tells me that even if he does play, he's not at 100% strength. So on top of all of this, the Rams don't even have a fully healthy quarterback. Ladies and gentlemen, I am picking the Chicago Bears to bring down the Rams and end their season. Not only is that what I want, it really just looks like that is what's going to happen. Because if we're being honest, the Rams have kind of stumbled their way into the postseason, and they are still stumbling with that game against Carolina. I believe the Bears can pull it out. And if that means doing nothing in the first 3 quarters and putting up 25 points in the final quarter to come back and win it, then so be it. There's not a single scenario of wins and losses throughout these 4 games that I am really against, honestly. We're getting a solid conference championship weekend no matter what. The question is, who will those teams be? Guess we'll have to wait and find out after this spicy looking divisional round.